Hey everyone, it is time to review magical librarian Ariana and the Books of 7 Heroes. Or seems like in this side of the lake it's going to be named Ariana and the Elder Codex. This entry was developed between Idea Factory, Compile Heart and Hive Inc., the same guys who also worked on games like Room Factory, Tides of Destiny, Guardians of Azuma and other entries like the famous Monster Mon Peace. As usual, I'll be checking the story, gameplay, graphics and music. So let's begin. Story-wise, we open with a small introduction that explains part of the lore, where a particular character gave magic to mankind. These powers were obtained through the creation of 4 elemental books. Time later, she will also give them a magical pen to create other books. That is how the 3 phenomena were written. With this power, human beings also needed a way to maintain them. This is where a peculiar library comes into play. Nonetheless, someone tampered with these specific books. As consequence, the magic around the world stopped working. This is where we follow a librarian named Ariana, girl who is able to get inside these books to find a way to fix them, beginning with the Book of Water, that shares the story of 2 sisters. As Ariana travels through this journey, she will get to see what is this story all about, how the little sister wanted to help the older one, but in the process she lost her life, and later how the older one makes a deal with a peculiar entity. Each book shares a number of notes that explain a story that I recommend to pay attention to, cause they will start to make sense as you traverse each tale. Ultimately, after repairing each book, Ariana gets to understand how all of them link one another. Nonetheless, this is only the beginning, because the lore in this game is huge. Once you get to see the library, you will find many documents that explain how humanity reached this particular point in time, what was the role of the demons, etc, etc. Plus Ariana's particular issues, and how everything links together in different levels. Some things are quite relevant, others just help in minor details. And yeah, at the end and for a change, here you won't see dumb and silly things, which I won't deny, I was surprised. Because let's say that 80% of the content here is quite serious and engaging, or at least you have me reading each document. What happened in each story? What were the consequences between those who interacted in each tale? And how Ariana is slowly but surely achieving her objective. Now, it is worth mentioning that this is not a story that wants to keep everything as a surprise. Right away you get to know where Ariana's journey starts to point to. But to be honest with you, I didn't mind that, because the way in which everything starts to evolve was of my liking, as some of these books start to share some weird ideas. Yeah, with help of us in real life. You will understand what I mean with this. But the thing is that I wanna give it an 8.5, because the general way in which the tale was developed was quite creative and intriguing, or at least I wasn't expecting most of those details like that, but I cannot really explain why I don't give it a higher score. You will have to find that on your own. Let's divide the gameplay into general ideas, mechanics and bosses. For those wondering, I played the game in hard difficulty and I believe it was a good challenge, really enjoyable as the game pushes you to be kinda efficient, but I'll get there. In any case, this is a relatively short side-scroller with RPG elements, which is focused on combat, where there are 5 elements, if we consider neutral as one of them. This system is rather simple, as you can exploit fire with water and the other way around. And yeah, do not confuse this game with a Metroidvania or something like that. Think about it like a kind of Mario game, where you reach an end. Per book there are like 7 rooms. Within these places there are different kinds of ideas. And sometimes you just go from one room to another, or sometimes they are connected in certain ways where they ask you to solve puzzles or get some skills to keep proceeding to the other rooms. For the most part, they are easy to traverse, but I do recommend to take some time to explore each place, as you need to beat for the most part a challenge within each area, or sometimes find a specific enemy to spawn these things. In essence, there are 2 kinds of challenges, where you need to beat some horde of enemies or go from point A to B, both of them with something like a time attack. Oftentimes you will face 3 hordes of enemies within these places. Most of these trials could be summarized as, if you have the right elements and moves, the combat is perfectly manageable. Otherwise, some enemies are simply impossible to beat relatively fast. I'll let you find that on your own. But the thing is that once you get the hang of these fights and how to combine magics, these challenges turn into a piece of cake. Yes, they become way harder in some cases, but we could extrapolate the same idea, get better skills, get the hang of the horse, and that's it. As for the go from one point to another, to be honest, I felt that some were a bit lazy. Perhaps like 2 or 3 of them. And don't worry too much about these trials, you have enough time to beat them within the time limit, but chances are that you may need to try several times. The catch here is that if you get A rank, the game gives you extra bonuses, like HP, points to allocate more equipment, or things like that. So in a certain way it pushes you to get good ranks, otherwise some battles can turn a bit problematic down the line. Now the whole combat revolves around finding optimal combos. At first you have but simple moves, but as you complete each book, you will unlock more magics and special attributes for those that are especially strong. Each attack has these little bars that explain their damage and time to execute. Some are really fast, while others take like 4-5 seconds to activate. And you cannot use 2 magics of the same attribute right away, until the one you activated finishes. So yeah, you can run every move with the same element, but you need to be strategic with your attacks. And of course, you have but 6 slots, so at least try to have something to recover HP and your basic sword attack. For the equipment, there are these points that can be increased with some A ranks. The thing is that each piece of equipment has a cost, and the best pieces of equipment are kinda expensive. In other words, you will have to choose what works the best for you. But that is pretty much the level of customization here, and you can get these items by exchanging some materials with NPCs in their library, or by completing some challenges. Where this gets quite interesting is once you fight a boss, because at least in hard difficulty, the first time, they can be relentless, at least if you aren't exploiting his skills as much as possible, because these combats can be cheesed really fast, but you need to understand what you're doing. So, if you enjoy challenging side-scrollers with honesty, I recommend to choose hard difficulty. Just 2 bosses feel like they are cheating really hard, but for obvious reasons I won't show those fights here. While the main ideas are relatively simple, I enjoy a lot most trials and exploration. I will give it a 9. Ariana and the Elder Codex combat system is quite entertaining. Yeah, some trials are a bit lazy, but in general each level was creative in an interesting way. In the graphics section I checked glitches, aesthetics, performance and other visual things. This is the PS5 version of the game, and I had no issues. It never froze, ran slow, had drops or anything like that. And I have no issues with its flow while executing attacks and magics. There is a nice synergy as the classic butter on bread. Now this is a game that surprised me a lot, let's be honest. For those of us who have played plenty of Idea Factory games, it is weird to see something as polished and graphically beautiful as this game. While there aren't that many characters, I like that they were really detailed and interesting. The usual visual novel interactions felt different. Now this is just me, but maybe that is one of the unfortunate things. I believe this game would have benefited from having a slightly bigger cast. As for the environments from each book, I believe they were simply beautiful, with minimal recycled backgrounds, as they tend to change. For example, the Book of Water begins as a small meadow, but as you reach deeper areas, it gets greener and greener. Let's say that each book delivers a similar feeling and idea, of course with a respective setting. My only complaint here is the lack of enemies. Unfortunately, and as most likely you notice, you will face the same enemies over and over and over again. There are a couple you don't get to see that often, but this is the lowest point from this particular section. Otherwise, I would have given it a 10, but as it is, an 8 seems fair enough. It is a beautiful game, compared with the classic standard that you see from Idea Factory, but let's be honest, the lack of variety hurts, considering that it is quite unique. And last but not least, its music. This OST has 18 tracks, going for around 1 hour. I would say that most compositions tend to be kinda chill but melancholic, and while I know that can be a turn off for some, I believe they go quite well for the general ambience of the game. Yes, it is also true that some areas and of course the bosses have upbeat compositions, but there is something magical. I will say that the combination between ambience, the general art, story, and other details like that match quite well. I wouldn't have asked for something different. In all honesty, it was a beautiful experience. The way in which the piano, synthesizer, percussion, and other instruments were used was of my liking. And what's cool is that each book has its own theme. On this front, tracks like Frostbound Age, Hidden Path, Mist and Flame, Via Perdita in Silva, Storm Breaks, among others were of my liking. Few were the compositions that are like, okay. On another note, what's worth mentioning is that 70 or something around that percentage was voice acted. Oftentimes you will see some balloons on top of Ariana, but they don't have voice acting. However, I believe that 70% delivers quite well. For me, this soundtrack is a 9.5. Yep, I definitely added this OST to my collection of daily tracks to listen to. Ariana and the Elder Codex final score is an 8.7. While it is a relatively short and simple journey, I believe it was quite good, and I recommend it for those who want to see something completely different from the usual Idea Factory. Then again, here you won't see silly things, and the combat elements were really entertaining. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.